The first glimmer of daylight broke over the Atlantic Ocean at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, May 24th, 1744. Silhouetted against dawn's ambient glow was a long line of boats, 14 chaloops, 2 privateers, and 1 sloop, bobbing up and down on a gentle swell. It had only been 21 days since news had reached Louisbourg that King Louis XV had declared war on the British. But, determined to strike the first blow, the French governor at Louisbourg ordered 140 French soldiers to the shores of Nova Scotia, where they would raid the English fishing community of Canso. Aboard this ramshackle jumble of boats, these soldiers now waited to disembark at their destination. When they arrived, the larger French ships opened fire on the small battery that guarded the entrance to the harbor, catching the townsfolk and the small English garrison completely off guard. Aboard one of the French boats, Antoine de La Boularderie watched closely as the situation developed. Although retired from the military, he had been asked by the governor to accompany the expedition since the commanding officer had never been to war before. Not long after the bombardment began, a French cannonball sailed through the walls of the rotten blockhouse, and the English garrison promptly surrendered. While the French set fire to the settlement, and columns of thick, black smoke billowed across the harbor, the French packed up their prisoners of war, sent their families off to Boston, and returned triumphantly to Louisbourg. Little did La Boularderie know that this was one of the last successes he would ever enjoy.
Je voudrais bien que tous ces bons vieillards s'orientent dans le paradis. Je voudrais bien que tous ces bons vieillards s'orientent dans le paradis. Et que toutes les...
After the raid on Canso, Antoine de La Boularderie returned home to Little Bredor. By 1744, he had been in Ile Royale, the name given to Cape Breton by the French, for nearly 5 years. Like his father before him, he was now commandant of both Little Bredor and Ingonish, a bustling cod fishing hub on the northern coast of the island. His wife, Éléonore de Bonny, had at some point joined him in Little Bredor, and if genealogical records are correct, they now had 5 children: Antoine, François, Marie Bernardine, Jean-Charles, and Louis, with more soon to come. His family's financial problems, all linked to their attempts at improving their land in Cape Breton, finally seemed to be under control. The Boularderies were now settled and thriving, and though it raged abroad, this new war must have felt far removed from their daily lives. During this period of relative prosperity, French engineer and cartographer Pierre-Jérôme Boucher came to Little Bredor to survey the community and the surrounding areas. The map he created of the community is nothing short of a masterpiece, but it's more than just a work of art. Aside from the important information it provided the government in Louisbourg in France, today it provides a kind of character sketch of the community, a portrait of a settlement now lost to time. Thanks to the extreme detail of Boucher's work and the high-resolution scans taken by the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, we can figuratively bring this long-lost settlement back to life. You can find this map on the BNF's website, Gallica, GALLICA.bnf.fr, by searching for Boularderie. For those of our listeners who are unfamiliar with the geography, Boularderies Island sits in the entrance to the Bredor Lakes, creating two passages on either side that connect the lakes to the Atlantic Ocean: the Big Bredor Channel to the west and the Little Bredor Channel to the east. The settlement was perched on the coast at the mouth of the Little Bredor Channel in the vicinity of today's Pointe Coney and Alder Point. The majority of fishermen lived on the north shore of the channel in small dwellings, built on a gentle slope that overlooked the channel. Some of the homes had their own gardens, no doubt so that the fishermen could supplement their harsh diet with fresh vegetables. Down by the shore, fishing stages built for processing cod, known as chaffaus, line the water's edge. The Boularderie homestead was located on the south side of the channel. Antoine once wrote that he had a very beautiful house, barn, stable, dairy, dovecote, oven, windmill, watermill for grinding the wheat, 25 cows, 6 oxen, 6 mares, 50 sheep, and 1 stallion. Combining his words with Boucher's map allows us to picture the house and outlying structures of the property. The house itself sat on a bluff overlooking the channel. The view must have been magnificent, like overlooking a narrow but powerful river. Although very little is known about its amenities or what it looked like, Antoine wrote that after arriving at Little Bredor, he lived a life of opulence with almost everything he ever needed, leading us to believe that it was very comfortable, even for Europeans. Behind the house was a kind of courtyard, with small outlying sheds or storehouses, flanked by 2 large enclosed European-style gardens. Some of these structures likely correspond to the ones Antoine mentioned in his description of the property, like the oven and dovecote. A road ran from the southernmost point of this courtyard through the forest and to the wide open farmland that overlooked the ocean. On this road, one would have passed another garden, and then stables that sat on the edge of these open fields, likely where Antoine's mares and stallion were kept. We could think of the Boularderies homestead as the 18th century version of other well-known Cape Breton estates, such as J.S. McLennan's Petersfield estate or Alexander Graham Bell's Ben Brea. Although nothing remains of this old homestead, the Government of Canada has erected a plaque commemorating the settlement and designating both Antoine and his father Louis Simon as National Historic Persons. In the same autobiographical letter mentioned in the first part of this episode, Antoine, who conveniently skimmed over his life during the 1720s and 30s, changes tack when arriving at the 1740s. As we begin to examine the contents of this letter more closely, notice the change in writing style as he recounts the events of May 1745.
It had been but 6 months since all my works were completed, and I hoped to live a gentle life in my pleasant retreat, when the king declared war on the English. The following year, while I was on my land, I learned that Louisbourg was blockaded by sea by an English fleet. I left my home in a small boat, it is 14 leagues to Louisbourg, and passed through the middle of the enemy fleet, arriving safely within the fortress.
Imagine the scene as Antoine is escorted briskly from the harbor and up through the citadel to the governor's residence, his heavy cloak flaring behind him as if to enunciate the urgency of the situation. When Antoine arrives, he finds the governor, Louis Dupont du Chambon, and many others that serve on the colony's superior council, paralyzed with fear. It turns out that Louisbourg isn't just blockaded by British ships. The fleet is carrying troops for an assault on the town. To make matters worse, part of Louisbourg's garrison had also mutinied less than a year earlier, raising serious questions in the governor's mind as to their loyalty. The situation is equally bad outside the walls of Louisbourg. The population of outports, like the Laurent-Becs and La Baleine, now Little and Big Lorraine and Baleine, are panicking. Du Chambon had expected the English to force their way through the mouth of the harbor, not attack the town from land. To top it all off, it seemed like the English were about to do something previously thought impossible: land troops on the coast below Louisbourg and cross the deep, waterlogged bogs that separated the town and Gabarus Bay to attack Louisbourg from behind. Now, the governor no longer knows what to do. Antoine and Louisbourg's port captain, Pierre Morpin, begged the governor to attack the English while they are landing at Gabarus. After much delay, the governor orders Morpin to lead the attack and La Boularderie to assist. Followed by 80 soldiers, they set off on foot to Gabarus Bay. Listen as Antoine de La Boularderie explains what happens next. We quote,
We were barely within cannon range from the town when we saw more than 1,500 of the enemy already ashore and forming ranks as they landed. I told Monsieur Morpin that it was useless to attack such a superior force, that our chance had been lost, and that it was now impossible to prevent the English from besieging Louisbourg. Had I been given the detachment 4 hours earlier, I could have stopped them and given them something to think about. No matter, said Morpin, let us march on. We had barely gone half a league when, instead of taking cover in the woods, we were marching openly in file. The English ships, moored broadside, caught sight of us and greeted us with their artillery. Monsieur Morpin told the men, take 15 paces interval to avoid the fire. I responded by noting that the marching appeared disorganized and that if he would let me take charge, I could get him out of this peril. Seeing the enemy advance, my intention was to form the detachment into 4 communicating platoons, maintaining a continuous fire of 20 muskets, each platoon of 20 men firing and then falling back to reload. Thus, I would have had ensured an orderly retreat against such adversaries. Only 12 soldiers followed us. I said to him for the last time, halt the detachment and reform it. You know nothing of land warfare, just as I know nothing of naval engagement. There is still time. We are within musket range of the enemy. With the maneuver I propose, we shall make an honorable retreat and not fall into their trap. He made no reply, but went on, and I followed until we found ourselves in a hollow, surrounded by the enemy. They opened a violent fire. He told me to hold out as long as I could while he went to gather the detachment to rescue me. Outraged, I said, Morpin, you have done a foolish thing. To flee in disorder like this is dishonorable. This place shall be our tomb. He persisted in going, crying out, every man for himself. I was left alone with my 12 brave soldiers. We fell back a few paces, firing point blank behind the trees. The enemy surrounded us, killed 7 of my men, and wounded the other 5, who were fortunate enough to reach the fortress. Seeing myself alone, without hope of help, I threw myself, sword in hand, into the midst of the enemy.
As he lies bleeding on the ground from 2 gunshot wounds, Antoine de La Boularderie watches the ring of English soldiers slowly tighten around him. He is now a prisoner of war.